Hello everyone and welcome to a guide to truck pulling. I hope to help you all develop an understanding of how to have a winning performance in this event, how to train for it and how to overcome any obstacles on the big day. I see it as three different stages. First, the start position, obvious in any event. The second being braking inertia, so initially starting the wheels in motion. And 3, building momentum. Now let's take a deeper look at those 3 points. The start position. As with any event, your start position will make or break your performance. So it's a good example for you to be able to see my start position here. I'm poised on the balls of my feet. You can see that my heels are lifted. I don't have a flat foot. The reason behind this, if you think about sprinters and their powerful muscles, they would be the calves, the quads and the glutes. If my heels are down, I'm not able to use my quads and my calves efficiently. They're really the powerhouses of any sprinting style event. You can see that my weight is shifted slightly forward, so I'm on the balls of my feet. My centre of gravity would be around the mid-foot. My body weight is clearly ahead of the midfoot, so weight ahead of the centre of gravity. This means that I'm leaning away from the truck that I'm about to pull. My arms are outstretched on the rope. I've got a good stretch in the lats. I'm pulling tension into that rope by using my reach. And this allows me to wedge myself between the two tight ropes. So my body weight is forwards, it's ahead of my centre of gravity, but because I've got both lines tight, I'm outstretched, this kind of gives me a little bit of a balance, so I can relax here. I feel weightless balance between these two ropes, while the wagon has got its handbrake on. So the next step is the referee counts you in, 3, 2, 1, the whistle goes, the handbrake goes off. What comes next? We certainly don't want to feel under tension in this start position while you're waiting for the referee to blow the whistle and for the truck driver to take the handbrake off. Braking inertia is the second stage. So looking at what inertia is, a property of matter by which it remains at rest or in unchanging motion unless acted on by some external force. So you can see that big roll of hay right there. The guy's trying to push against it. The big roll of hay is in inertia. It's not moving unless an external force tries to move it. The external force being the guy. Whether it's actually moving or not, who fucking knows? It's a picture. So if we look at braking inertia, you are the external force to try and move that resting object. The cues that I like to think of, your hands are on that rope and the toe line is pulled tight. You're outstretched. I think about pulling my hips towards my hands and pulling my hands towards my hips. So it should be what is essentially an upright hip drive or glute bridge, yeah? Intention is everything in this stage. When you're trying to move a heavy object, let's say that's 10 tons that you're trying to pull, it's not going to move itself. It's certainly not going to be coaxed into it by being gentle. Intention is everything. So we want to be aggressive as hell in this stage. Starting the wheels in motion is sometimes the hardest part of this particular event. The cue that I like to give is a sexually frustrated T-Rex. Think they've got tiny little arms, their little dick is miles away from them, you're pulling your hands towards your hips, you're trying to drive your hips towards your hands. This is the picture that I came up with. Speak to my therapist if you're concerned about me. Be a sexually frustrated T-Rex. He must be really, really annoyed that he can't reach his wanger. Now let's look at the next stage. Building momentum. So we've nailed the start position, we've got the wheels in motion with absolute intent and conviction. Next, let's look at trying to build some sort of speed and get you over the finish line. Take baby steps. Now, if we take giant steps, all that's going to happen is you're going to be overstretched, you're not going to be in a powerful position to drive force into the ground. And more than likely your heel's going to hit the floor as well. So we want to take baby steps, tiny little ones. You are much stronger when your knee is almost locked out than when your knee is at 90 degrees. So remind yourself of that. You want to build speed, not stride, and by that I mean you don't want to build stride length. So we're still staying with those tiny steps, and you're just trying to make them a little bit faster as the wheels start building their speed. When you're handling the hand rope, you're grabbing it at head height. Now I see two reasons for this. Number one being your eyes are right there. You can see where you're putting your hand on the rope, and this just removes any incident where you might lose a grip of the rope because you're not looking at it. I don't look at the finish line, I look at my hands, I look at the rope. I'm focusing on following a straight path, and every time I reach the rope, it's right in front of my eyes with my hand, and the rope is in the centre of my hand. I clasp my hand around the rope, and then I'm pulling it back towards my chest. The second reason for grabbing it at head height, you're much stronger in this position. If you were to reach your arms out at full length, so your elbows are locked right ahead of you, and try to pull from there, you're not going to feel as strong. So imagine, you're trying to learn how to do pull-ups. From a dead hang, it's much harder. From a 90-degree elbow bend, it is much easier. You feel much stronger in that position. Stay on your toes. This is where you're most powerful. This is where you can transfer the force from your calves, your quads and your glutes the best. And you can also keep an awful lot of traction in the ground. We'll talk about when it's appropriate to go with a flatter foot in the future slide, but right now the conditions are great. It's a dry day, the tarmac is beautiful, there's no loose pebbles on the floor. Stay on the balls of your fucking feet. Breathing. Initially, I don't take too many breaths. When I'm breaking inertia and I'm doing that powerful hip drive, it's like doing a 1 rep max deadlift. I don't breathe out and gasp while I'm pulling the bar off the floor. Once it's locked out, I'll take a breath. But while I'm trying to exert force maximally, I'm not worried about how much I'm breathing, because it's not going to take that long for me to get to the top. But any kind of gasping for air that I'm doing during that pulling stage, that pulling phase, is potentially going to cause me to lose tension. So during the initial stage of breaking inertia, I hold my breath while I'm driving force into the toe line behind me. Once I start gathering momentum, that's when I start focusing on rhythmic breathing. So you could think of it as every fourth step you're taking a breath, or you could think of it as every time your right foot lands on the floor, you breathe out. Maybe that's your strongest leg. And every time your left foot hits the ground, you're breathing in. And it wants to kind of match the pace of your feet, and the pace of your hands wants to match the pace of your feet as well. So the cue that I'm giving here is to climb the ladder. So directly on the ground in front of you is a perfectly straight line. It's a little ladder. The spaces between the handles are not too long, and it's a very narrow ladder. So you're not able to stride your feet out too wide on this ladder, and you're not able to take too big a step. Okay, so follow this tiny ladder. You're taking very small baby steps. Your feet are staying on the ladder. They're not straying outside of that. That is a very important point that I want to highlight here. Often what can go wrong in a truck pull is taking too wide a stride, and that causes the athlete to be swayed from side to side. And it takes an awful lot of effort to try and regain that straight path again. So be focused, keep to the straight path, climb the ladder, hands and feet moving at the same time, and breathing wants to follow those steps as well. Horizontal toe rope. So you can see in the photo below, you can see that the toe line is pretty much horizontal in that picture. This just means that we're not losing any force that we're applying to that particular object. If the toe line is pointing up you're pulling the weight of the truck up and forwards rather than straight forwards. To me, this doesn't make any sense. If the tow line was pointing towards the floor, you're pulling down and forwards. To me, this doesn't make any sense. It wants to be in as perfectly horizontal line as possible. And we'll just go into the possibilities of that now. It is very, very dependent on where the towing eye on the vehicle that you're pulling actually is in relation to the floor. So in this particular picture, this wagon is perfectly set up for me. I'm able to get into a bear crawl position with it and show a horizontal line on the tow rope. Now, we'll see in a video on one of the slides later on in this video, but some vehicles have a very low tow eye, or just a crossbar where the tow line is actually tied to. It's all irrelevant. You've got to judge the vehicle and where the tow eye is in relation to where your optimal start position is going to be and your optimal driving position is going to be. So if it's very low, obviously the tow line is going to be pointing up, because not all of us are tiny little creatures. If we were borrowers, then it might be optimal, but it's unlikely that we'd be able to move the vehicle unless we were magic borrowers. So in that instance, it's perfectly acceptable to have an off horizontal tow line. So it will be angled up if the towing eye is too close to the ground for us to be able to recreate that horizontal line. Sometimes it might be a lot higher than your optimal pulling position or start position, in which case the towing rope would be pointing down, it would be angled down towards the floor. Now, these are the only instances where that's an acceptable reason for you to not have a horizontal towing line, but all being well, perfect case scenario is that the towing eye is not too close to the ground, it's not too high off the ground, it's, Goldilocks, so that you can be in a perfectly powerful position with that towing rope horizontal, so we're not losing any force that we apply into that floor and into that vehicle. Next, maintaining tension. Now this is really fucking important. Keep both ropes tight. If you have been granted the gift of an arm rope, a handling rope, use it. Anytime that it goes slack, you're losing tension on the vehicle that you're pulling behind you. So we want to keep both of those things tight. Another reason why you want to keep that handling rope tight, if you're a smaller athlete, you're not necessarily going to have the body weight advantage working in your favour. You're not necessarily going to have optimal leg power and leg strength. So using your full body to its advantage is going to benefit you. I think that speaks for itself. I think it's very obvious that a full body working, all of the muscles working at once, is going to be much superior to just your legs working and your body weight leaning against that truck. Now, for bigger athletes, this might not be the case, and certainly clumsy athletes, if they're bigger, they can really lean their body weight into it. They've got big, powerful legs. They might not need the handling rope as much, but we'll discuss that later on as well. So keep both ropes tight. That's non-negotiable. Generate force with the upper body, as I've mentioned. Keep the pressure on. So what I mean by this, you've got the thing started, you've started to build momentum and build a little bit of speed. You don't know what's going to come up on the surface in the later stages of that truck pull. So there's things like drains in the middle of roads. You might be in a car park, it might not have been laid very level. So you have no idea what obstacle you're going to hit. And if you kind of gather speed and you're happy with the speed that you've gained and you just try and maintain it, it's likely that you hit a little dip in the tarmac or whatever surface it is that you're pulling on. and you could lose speed of that vehicle. And because you didn't keep the pressure on, it's been pulled into a little well, and then potentially you've got to start braking inertia all over again, and that is just soul destroying. So once you've got the damn thing going, keep the fucking pressure on, keep both of the ropes tight, try and accelerate all the way. As soon as you've broke inertia, it should be a race to try and get that thing up to the top speed that you can possibly get it up to. And only once that vehicle has crossed the finish line do you stop. Yeah? Absolutely nothing relaxes. You don't let up at all until you're told to stop. So the cue I want to give here is bringing the horses in. So we've all heard of the great medieval torture of being hung, drawn and quartered. So yeah, it's a bit brutal, and it's not a perfect metaphor for this, but if you think, yeah, you've got two horses on each leg, maybe it's tied around your fucking waist, around your butt, and then you've got two horses pulling on a rope that's attached to your fucking hands. I want you to pull those horses towards you. I don't want them to pull you apart. Obviously, in reality, if you stop pulling the vehicle, the rope's going to go slack. It's not going to pull you in two. It's all down to you, but just think about pulling those horses in. You're about to be split into 4 pieces. Don't let them. Don't let the horses do it. Be stronger than the horses. Pull the horses in. How to train without a truck. Now, this is interesting. You can get really creative with these things. Obviously, the best case scenario is you got a pal with a truck. He's a truck driver. He's happy to come over on a weekend and let you loan it and do stupid things in the car park. That's great. If that's what you've got, I would suggest nailing the start position and braking inertia and just doing 5-metre pulls and really working on that. I can't emphasise enough how important that start is. If you nail the start, the rest of it's going to go so damn well. If you don't nail it and you don't put as much power into it as you possibly could, or you're just under-practiced with it, it just means that you have to work so much harder throughout the rest of the event. So that's our best case scenario. Second best case scenario, you've got a 4x4 with a towing bar on the back of it, and you're able to set that up, and you get your mate's car, put the towing eye on, set up a harness. This is all assuming that you've got a harness and a towing rope and a handling rope, but you know, we don't all have that luxury. But if you did, you could do it like that. To make the vehicle that you're pulling a little bit heavier, you can get people to sit in the car. You could set up a sled with weights on it to create more friction to drag behind that vehicle, or you could even mess about with the vehicle's health and put the handbrake on a click or two just to create a little bit more friction. So if you're finding that the start is very easy, it's a light vehicle, maybe you're pulling a little Twingo, yeah, that's not going to give you much resistance. A child could move that, so how do you make it harder? Set up a sled behind it, stick a load of weights on, stick a load of bodies in the vehicle, and play around with putting a number of clicks on the handbrake. But that's not really very good for the vehicle, but it is always nice to actually play with some wheels in training. So how do we simulate it without playing around with vehicles? Truck in a box. It's basically a little rope in a little mechanism. You've got a harness that you put around your shoulders. You tether this mechanism up to an immovable object in the gym. And it works kind of like an assault bike or a rowing machine. So the more force that you put into it, the harder you work, the more resistance it gives you. So the harder you pull, the harder the object is to pull. Which is a really great concept, but first of all, to purchase it, it's about 250 quid, and you've got to import it from America, so there'll be import taxes added on to that fee as well. If you're Mr. Moneybags, that's a great option to play around with. If you're not Mr. Moneybags and you're just in a normal functional training facility, there are a few other options that we can play around with, and they work just as well. So we've got a belted sled drag with a rope assist. Loose belt around your waist. You're going to loop the pull rope around that belt, and that's going to be the force, the resistance that you're trying to pull forwards with you. You've got a rope assist, like there's battle ropes in some gyms, and I would suggest that you tie a battle rope to an immovable object somewhere in front of you, that makes sense. You don't want to be pulling on a diagonal line. You want to be pulling in a straight line. So if there's a shutter, you could maybe wedge it underneath the shutter. If there's big heavy tires, you could maybe tie it around one of those tires. And that just simulates as best as possible in a gym setting a truck pull. I would point out with the rope assist that you have the rope set high in relation to the floor. So by that I mean if you're tying it to a squat rack, you don't want to tie it to the bottom of the squat rack. You want to tie it to about knee height. Or if you're tying it around a tire, you want the rope to be coming down from the top of the tire rather than coming up from the bottom of the tire. So sled drag, it's best with a prowler so that you can actually put a load more weight on top of the prowler, and you can even add bodies to it as well. They're the best way of loading because it just means that you don't have to bugger about trying to fish plates out from around the gym and exhaust yourself in carrying them around. I'm a lazy bugger in training, and as much as I can avoid stacking a load of 20 kilo plates onto a thing, I am going to avoid it, so I will ask the heaviest person in the gym that I can find. So next we're moving on to belted sled drag. With a prowler push, you're dragging that behind you, and you've got a prowler in front of you to push forwards as you're pulling that sled. Obviously this doesn't quite mimic the pulling action of your arms, but it certainly gets your upper body used to being under tension and poised during that particular movement. It also gives you so much more resistance to drive against. So this is a great exercise anyway, a great and brutal finisher to put in the end of your workouts. I really enjoy doing it, and especially if you've got bodies on the prowler and bodies on the sled, you just look like an absolute beast. Next, we've got partner-resisted band drags. So you can see from the image that I've put in the middle of this slide, you've got a heavy resistance band around the waist. You could even loop it around the shoulders and then put another resistance band through that looped band and just have the partner holding onto the back of those resistance bands and, creating resistance for you to pull against. This is also a great option for a warm-up when it comes to the big day. You might potentially not have an awful lot of equipment to use. You don't need equipment to warm up for a truck pull. I'll talk you through it all. But this is a great option to have. They don't take up too much space in your gym bag. 2 heavy resistance bands. Sling them around your shoulders, get one of your mates to hold on to the back of them and just provide resistance for you to pull against. This is probably going to mimic it the best for you to be able to warm up for on the big day. And it's always nice to play with a friend, so yeah, that's good fun. Assistance work for the upper body, standing rope arm over arm. So again, we're in one of those functional training facilities where they've got ropes for you to be able to do arm over arm, where you can attach it to a prowler quite easily. You want to do this standing and folded forward, so think of a hip hinge, think of a bent over barbell row position. This is going to mimic the position that you're going to be in when you're doing the truck pull, so you want to mimic that in training as well. So your body's nice and horizontal or just above horizontal, and you bring in the rope in, and you don't want to load it so heavy that you have to turn it into double arm pulls, but you want to load it just heavy enough that you feel like maybe 10-20 kilos heavier you'd have to go into double hand pulls. You just want to be able to practice that hand over hand pull in, and building speed with it as well, because the biggest problem that I've found with my fast feet on a truck pull is my hands keeping up with them, and sometimes you'll see, in fact, I've got a video of myself doing that truck pull a couple of weeks ago in one of the future slides, so we'll talk about that and I'll point that out, but you can see that my hands are slower than my feet. So this is a great option to just get you handling the rope and practicing that hand speed, practicing looking down at the rope and watching your hand grasp the rope and pull it in towards your chest. So next we've got a single arm rope pull down. So we know rope tricep extensions, that kind of rope that you set up on a cable machine. The little knobbles on the end of the rope, don't hold your hand against that, because in reality that's not going to be there. It's not going to block your hand and aid your grip in a truck pull. So we don't want to use it in training either. You want to hold above that, so your little finger is not touching that rubber stopper. It's free from that, and it's down to your grip strength to be able to pull that rope in. So we're just working on single arm rope pull downs there, and close grip pull downs as well, which will really mimic that start position, pull in with the hands, load that hard and fucking heavy and absolutely butcher yourself with it. So the above options, standing rope arm over arm, I'd do that for high volume. Single arm rope pull down, I would do that for high volume. Close grip pull down, I would do that a little bit lower volume, maybe working up to 6 to 8 reps to just get a really, really heavy load going through the arms and through the lats, and really giving a feel for how much force you can exert during that initial braking inertia stage of the truck pull. Lower body exercise is a brilliant one to put in your toolbox when you're training for a truck pull, would be Anderson squats. So a normal traditional back squat, you would be stood upright and you would go into an eccentric loading phase, so your muscles are going through a stretch, and then you'd, well, more often than not, bounce out the hole and drive back up into extension. Now this doesn't reflect a truck pull. You're not eccentrically loading your muscles with a truck pull. It's like a deadlift. You've got to brake inertia, so you've got an immovable object, you've got to move that. Your body's not loaded for it, you've just got to summon the energy to be able to move that without your body previously being loaded and prepared for it. So Anderson squats are a great weapon to use in your training. An Anderson squat is basically a pin squat. You set pins in a squat rack to whatever height you want to work with, but I would point out that in a truck pull, your knees are not likely to be lower than a 90-degree bend. So I would always set the pins so that I'm starting a squat with my knees above 90 degrees. So you want to be doing like a partial squat. And an Anderson squat is where you're lifting the bar off the pins. You're not unracking the bar, stepping back, lowering down to the pins and then driving up. The bar is already set on the pins. You wedge yourself underneath, get into a good tight start position. See how this is mimicking the truck pull. And then you've got to get tight and you've got to exert force and move that bar off the pins to lock out. A wonderful exercise. I can't stress enough how much that's going to benefit you. Next, low box step-ups. I might point out that the Anderson squats, you want to work at low volume there, because really what we're working on is that initial braking inertia stage. So yeah, 3 to 5 reps there, even working up to a 1 rep max, just develop your maximal strength on that exercise, and that's going to benefit you massively. Next, we'll move on to low box step-ups. So a low box, because we're not taking big steps, remember? We're taking baby steps. So that doesn't want to be any higher than 12 inches. I'd probably say that 12 inches is still a little bit too high. So working around the 6 to 8 inch box height. You can load this any which way you want. You can load it with dumbbells in the hands, with a bar on the back, with a bar on the front, whatever the hell you want. But do these hard and heavy. You're looking for high volume with these ones, maybe working 10 to 15 reps each leg. Hip thrusts, again, that initial braking inertia phase is a hip thrust, except it's a hip thrust on the balls of your feet. So getting hard and heavy with this exercise is going to benefit you massively. Getting used to driving the hips forwards or up. Calf raises, yes, they need to be strong, they need to be flexible. I've seen quite a few people pop their calves during a truck pull. Don't be that guy. I think a couple of years ago somebody actually ruptured their Achilles tendon as well, so fucking hell, guys, the more you can do to bulletproof your ankles and your calves before a truck pull, like, you don't know what the situation's going to be when you get there. You know, weather can change an awful lot on the day, because this is obviously nigh on always going to be done outside. You don't know what the surface is going to be like that you're pulling on. If you're in a mobile fucking potato, then you're asking for trouble, mate. So work on your ankle range of motion, get your calves nice and strong, get them nice and supple, be able to go into dorsiflexion with control. So if you do get into a weird position and your heels start hitting the floor and you pushed into a lot of ankle range of motion, then, you know, hopefully nothing's going to go pop. But the more you can do to prevent that happening, the better, because that's for some, that's quite a career-ending injury right there. Nobody wants to see that either. It's not fun for the spectators, so don't freak out the children. Other considerations. Footwear is the most important part of your personal equipment, so that's separate to the rest of your personal equipment that we're going to talk about next. Footwear is, like, you wear the wrong shoes, you're fucked. It doesn't matter how much you've practiced it, how strong you are, you're wearing stupid shoes, like, you've just given it away. So rock climbing shoes are the most optimal choice of footwear. Reason being, they're obviously designed so that they get an awful lot of traction from surfaces that don't necessarily have any footholds in them, and yeah, it's nice supple rubber. What I might point out with regards to the rock climbing shoes, if it's a cold day and it's a cold surface, the rubber's going to be quite cold, so it's not going to be as supple. It's not going to be as grippy. So I do like a little dance when you're seeing a dog do a post poo dance and they're scrubbing the floor with their feet. So I'm just kind of scuffing while I'm waiting for myself to get harnessed in. I'm just scuffing the balls of my feet just to get the rubber nice and warm and supple. Besides that, you know, that's really the best option that you've got. If you don't have rock climbing shoes, or you're very late notice and you can't get a hold of any, you know, you can buy some really cheap ones on the internet. So I would always recommend that you have them in your kit bag just in case. But if not, you've taken it last notice, and you've got some hiking boots, you've got some trainers, you've got a variety of trainers. Take quite a few options, because you don't know what you're going to need until you get there. So take a few options, and this is an idea I've stolen from Josh Lancaster. So you get to the place, you're on the surface, find an immovable object, put on a pair of the shoe options that you've brought, and just get into a good start position that you're trying to mimic the start position of the truck pull, leaning against this immovable object, and just see how much give there is in your feet. If your feet start to slip, put on the next pair. Test them all out and see which ones are the most grippy. I might point out with trainers that the more absorbent they are of force, so running shoes, that sponginess, yeah, that's not going to benefit you very much, because any force that you apply through your shoe into the floor to move the object, you're kind of wasting effort by compressing that squishy sole. So it wants to be quite a hard and flat sole. If you think of like Reebok Nanos or Metcons or even Converse and Vans, they don't have squishy soles. They're not developed for running specifically. You can run in them, but your feet might hurt, your knees might hurt afterwards, but that's the point. You don't want to wear a pair of shoes that have got a sole that compresses quite substantially, that's designed to absorb force like a running shoe is. And certainly, like fucking Nike Air Max, Jesus Christ, guys, don't do it. That is the most stupid trainer. Don't wear those for a truck pull. Like, fuck off. Okay, personal equipment. We've talked about the shoes. The next option would be, and I would make this a non-negotiable, they don't have to be tight, but I would always wear them, knee sleeves, because I don't practice what I preach sometimes, and I can be quite the fool on a truck pull. I have slipped quite a couple of times, and, if your hands are so focused on the rope in your hands, then you don't break your fall with your hands, you land on your knee, and it's just for peace of mind that I'm not going to shatter my kneecap when I go colliding with the floor. A few years ago, though, I'll save that for the talking about the working surface, but personal equipment, non-negotiable, wear a pair of knee sleeves. They don't have to be tight, and I would actually recommend that they're not that tight. You get an enormous quad pump and glute pump going on, and you're going to have a bad time if you're putting this tourniquet around your fucking knees just to promote more blood to pump into the muscles that are jacked anyway from doing, 100 steps just pumping blood into your legs. They don't want to be that tight. Obviously, if you've got knee problems, I would consider why you've got knee problems. But if you do, and you're concerned about them doing a truck pull, then maybe the tighter ones are going to benefit you, just for injury prevention. But certainly for me, injury prevention means not shattering my kneecap when I hit the floor, because I am clumsy and that's what happens. Other personal equipment, I don't wear belts. I don't get why people wear belts. For me, it's very restrictive on my breathing. If I'm going to be out of breath at all during any event, it's going to be something like this, where it's a race and there's no let up, there's no fucking rest. It's using every single muscle in my body. I'm going to be exhausted by the time I get to the end. And if I've got something around my belly that's restricting my breathing, I don't like that. Maybe some people do, but I don't find it benefiting me. I'm certainly not thinking too much about bracing my core while I'm doing this. I'm just focusing on keeping a neutral spine, but you should all be quite well versed in what a neutral spine is. It's all about kind of back and legs, not so much to do with the core. So unless you've got a back injury and you're concerned about it, maybe you're wearing a neoprene soft belt might help you out and just kind of give you a little bit of a placebo effect, thinking that it's actually going to benefit the truck pull. But like I said, I don't think it aids it whatsoever, other than fucking your breathing. So that's up to you. Elbow sleeves, well, you're just going to get pumped up forearms. It's not going to feel nice. You don't need your arms to straighten. Like, the point of an elbow sleeve is to aid getting your elbows into a locked out position, into extension, and at no point during this do we even want to do that. So if you've got bicep problems, if you've got elbow problems, deal with the problem. It's not going to benefit you in a truck pull by wearing elbow sleeves. And if you've got an issue, you should deal with the issue, not continue competing and ignoring it. Wrist wraps I had a thought about, because obviously if we apply pressure around the wrist, that kind of closes the hand. Perhaps if you have poor grip and you've tested out the rope and you can't really get a grip on the rope, this might be a good option for you to put on. Putting them on nice and tight so that you can actually, increase your grip strength ever so slightly or artificially. Chalk. is personal equipment. And I would never rely on an event organizer to bring me my own personal equipment. Like, I don't show up to an event and say, hey, can I borrow a belt? Can I borrow a deadlift suit? Can I borrow some knee sleeves? Can I borrow some underpants? Can I borrow some chalk? Like, take your own chalk, guys. Liquid chalk, I prefer in this instance. It's usually going to be put on a summer's day, nice and sunny, because that's, the best time that, especially in England, we can actually do an outdoor event without it being sabotaged by the fucking weather. So liquid chalk to me is mint. It gets right deep into the crevices of my hands, and it's going to last a lot longer than powdered chalk or block chalk, especially if I'm sweating my ass off. So, don't rely on the event organizer. Bring your own fucking chalk. What else have we got? Gloves, potentially. If it's a wet day, this might benefit you. So I have done truck pulls where the rope has kind of been saturated with water, and with each participant going, the next one's got to take a whole heap more water through the rope, and this can become so problematic to grip hold of. In this instance, maybe gloves might be of benefit to you. If you want to check out appropriate gloves for strongman, think like American football style gloves. There's actually a link if you go to Josh Lancaster's Instagram page and go to his link tree. He's got a link to what he considers to be appropriate gloves for strongman. You can use them for sandbag picks and keg carries and such, but it's always nice to have these options in your kit bag, so I would go with it. Like I said, you never know when it's going to piss down in the summer in England, so chalk's not really going to do much if the rope in your hands is fucking soaking wet, but gloves might just get you through and build up a few points for you. That's all I've got on personal equipment. Those mouth guards, whatever, man. Like, I've never seen the point in them. I don't want something else in my mouth to worry about, and they make me gag. I don't know about you guys, but anyway, do what you want, but they're my recommendations. The weather, I've spoken about it already. It's either going to be dry, or it's going to be dry after a wet spell, or it's going to be pissing down. You just don't know. But it's likely we're never going to be pulling in snow. So, how does that change your position? Now, if you're on the balls of your feet in optimal conditions, it needs to change a little bit when the weather turns a little bit soggy. So, only in this instance would I recommend getting a more upright position and having a flatter foot, and certainly smaller than baby steps. Borrower steps, teeny tiny steps are going to be so much better than big long lunges. Once you go down, it just seems like you just keep fucking going down as well once you slip on the ground. So it starts pissing down. Maybe rock climbing shoes are not a good option. You've brought a few pairs of shoes to try out. They're in your kit bag, so if it starts pissing down, or even if it looks like the weather's going to change when you're looking at the forecast during the pull, just empty maybe a bottle of water on the surface that you're going to be pulling on. Might I add, don't do it where the truck pull's actually set up, where you might be seen as a cunt. Sabotaging somebody else's pull. Do it off to one side, but don't do it on a different surface. Do it off to one side where nobody's going to be pulling. Empty a bottle of water, try out your shoes again, and see which ones have got more traction on the surface, on a wet surface. Okay? So, we've covered the weather. There's not really anything else you can do about it. You just get over it. Everybody's in the same position. Unfortunately, it might mean that it rains when you go, but 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 people have gone before you in the dry. That's just tough fucking shit. It's a hobby. Get over it. working surface. So best case scenario, you've got a beautiful run of tarmac and it's smooth, there's no bumps in it, it's perfectly straight, there's no divots, there's no, downward or upward slopes. Downward slope would be nice, but it's not always the case. So the picture that I've chosen here, just as a talking point, the road markings. So in my CBT, I was told avoid these as much as possible on a motorbike. They don't have as much traction, and certainly in the wet they're going to be slippy as hell. So the same rules apply when you're doing a truck pull. There's not as much weight in you, hopefully, as there would be a motorcycle. So you're not going to be able to grip the road as well as a motorcycle. And if it's not recommended to follow them on a motorbike, then I wouldn't recommend following them in your rock climbing shoes either. So like cracks in the tarmac, with grass growing out of them, like it's all happened. Little drainage lines in the middle of a road. Obviously, when it's being laid, the road is designed so that it slopes towards these drains to drain away water. So that means that there's going to be a little divot in the road. You want to plan out your path. You've seen the event, you've seen the truck set up. Have a little walk straight down the line where the truck is to where the finish line is, and just mark out any obstacles that are in your way. Is there any road markings? Are there any cracks in the pavement? Are there any weeds growing out of the cracks? How pebbly is it? That's a big one. They're obviously, like, the more worn a surface is, the more gravel and aggregate is going to be pulled out of that tarmac. So if it's all over the place, I mean, I don't know how anally retentive you want to be, but if you want to take a yard brush in your gym bag, by all means. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with you or try and stop you, and just do a little sweep down, do a little bit of a curling championship warm up before you before you do your truck pull. But yeah, like, be observant, have a little look at the working surface and map out any obstacles that might, put your performance under a risk. And just the more information that you have, the more you plan this out, the better prepared you are for the actual pull. And, you start approaching this patch of weeds, that you maybe take a little bit of a bigger step so you avoid it. Just simple things like that. The more informed you are, the better you can actually apply yourself to the event. So yeah, just be observant. A rope handler, oh my god. So it's usually one of the helping hands, one of the volunteers that's helping set up the event, maybe one of the loaders, and some of them can be a little bit keen. So if you feel like this guy is pulling the rope out of your hands, it's really annoying, mate. It's really, really annoying. I don't see any problem with, especially in a low-key competition, where you're asking one of your training partners or one of your friends or one of your fellow competitors who understands the problem with the misguided rope handler or over-keen rope handler. Ask the event organiser if you can have one of your mates doing the rope for you. So what you're looking for is for there to be a clear loop and loose rope between you and the rope handler. So it doesn't want to be pulled taut. You're pulling the rope in, and then the rope handler is pulling it taut from your hands. That's pulling it in one direction, and I've had that happen. It's really, really fucking annoying, and I think more more off-putting than actually negatively impacting your pull, but you never know, do you? So keep an eye on the rope handler, make sure he understands. Don't stand right next to me, stand 2 meters away from me, and keep the line loose between me and you. Yeah? Just a little point on that. Warming up, right. So we've seen the option for the banded partner drills. That's a great one. It doesn't take up too much space to put a couple of fucking bands in your bag. Next, we want to think about mobilising the ankles, warming those up. You don't want to do it too soon. If you know that your go is like the 20th go out of 20 people. Wow, that was stupid of me. You don't want to be warming up before the first one. You want to be warming up maybe around the 15th pull, something like that. Get your ankles moving. I'd say get your toes moving as well. The more mobility that you've got in the front of your feet, the better. So we're thinking about doing a little bit of ankle mobility. I want you to think about doing a little bit of hip mobility, and resistance bands are your friends here. You want to be warming up your lats, your biceps. You want to be warming up your quads, so thinking about walking lunges, bodyweight squats, calf raises. Yeah, get some blood going in those guys. Lean against an immovable object and kind of straighten out those arms. Put your feet right back behind you. Do some calf raises pressing against this immovable object with the legs straight and with the legs bent. So you want to bend the knees to do a little bit of calf raises, and you want to straighten the knees to do a little bit of calf raises. This just means that you hit both of the calf muscles, the soleus and the gastrocnemius. Gastrocnemius, whatever you want to call it, gastroc and soleus. So yeah, what have we got there? We've got ankle mobility, hip mobility. We want to warm up the quads, the calves, the lats, the biceps. And the glutes are the most important one. Yeah, some hip thrusts. If there's a deadlift bar going on, if you're in a full event and it's not just a standalone truck pull event, you want to be doing some stiff leg deadlifts, maybe some RDLs. You can even, if there's not that option, you've brought some resistance bands with you because you're a smart ass and you listen to Coach Jenny. You put that around your neck, you're doing some good mornings. Maybe you've got a hip circle, you want to do some lateral band walks where the band's around your knees. You can play around with the bands being around your ankles or your feet. Just all sorts, man. Get nice and warm before you go into it. Do not go into that thing cold. That's where things go snap and you're just not going to perform optimally. So don't do it. Don't miss out the fucking warm-up because you're a hard ass. Be a smart person. Do your fucking warm-ups. Tips for Slim Jims. Right, here's the video of me. Right, let's rewind this a little bit. Got a good reach. That's the same, like I've taken a still from that and put it on previous slide. I've got my patella saving knee sleeves on. I'm reaching really far forwards on that rope. I'm up onto the balls of my feet and my weight is ahead of my centre of gravity. I'm going to do a big, powerful hip drive. So, see the sexually frustrated Tyrannosaurus Rex? Oh, balls. T-Rex now! And then I do another big reach forwards, big hip drive, T-Rex style. And then I'm starting to drop down to get that horizontal line on the toe bar. And I'm just digging in. Small pulls with the hands, small steps with the feet. I'm trying to develop a rhythm. You see that my rope handler is a good guy. Thank you, Andrew. He's keeping it loose between me and him so that he's not pulling the rope out of my hands. And see this straight line that I'm able to follow. Luckily, we were set up bang on those lines, so I actually had something visual in place to follow. It's quite hard when you've just got plain tarmac everywhere and you've got no actual straight line to follow. I'm not very good at that, so that was a good pull for me, but sometimes I'm not that great at seeing straight lines. Tips for Slim Jims. Braking inertia is going to be much harder because your body weight's lower. It's not going to work in your favour. So you saw that I did 2 start pulls. I broke inertia once, but I went into another start position pull just to get more speed on those wheels before I start leaning down and digging in with the baby steps. So multiple starting pulls is a good option if you're a slim Jim. And like aggression, your intent has to be 10 times more than a big guy, because you know you don't have body weight working in your favour pulling against that wagon. And with that, because you don't have the same amount of muscle mass as a 120 kilo guy, I'm a 75 kilo woman. I don't have as much muscle mass, so I don't have as much ability to display strength. I don't, like, for instance, Andrew went before me. He's a big dude, 120, 130 kilos, somewhere between those numbers. And yeah, he didn't seem to put an awful lot of effort into his starting pull. He just kind of leaned into it. And, you know, he's got a big deadlift, he's got a big overhead press, he's got a big pulling strength. I can't match that, so I have to have more intent. I have to change my strategy. So I had 2 starting pulls, and I just switched on the aggression. I don't find that hard to do in a truck pull because I absolutely love it, and I really want to put on a good display for the crowd. Especially being a skinny lass, you know, they absolutely love seeing tiny little women just kicking ass pulling a big truck. Like, that's weird. You don't see that every day. So give them a spectacle, turn the aggression up a notch or 10, and see what you can do with that. You just can't go into it half-arsed. Less margin for error. The straighter the path, the better it is for you. Anytime you deviate off that straight path, you know, you take a wider step, you're just going to fanny about and fumble trying to get back into that straight line. I would reiterate to watch your hands obsessively and just make sure that every time you're reaching on the rope, you are grabbing it, you're not missing it. You can't afford to miss it when you're a lighter athlete. And I would reiterate again the importance of keeping tension on both ropes if you're a slim Jim. Because, again, I've spoke about it before, but you can't solely rely on your body weight and your leg strength. You have to use your full body as a unit. Better conditions than larger athletes. This is where you might, you know, be favourable in this particular event. It is an endurance event, so that you're much more likely to be in better condition, not blowing out your arse as much by the time you get to the finish line as the bigger athletes. Because traditionally they tend not to be that good at cardio and endurance events. They're better at displaying, you know, maximal strength, 1 rep maxes, and yeah. So make up for slower starts by accelerating through the finish line. Like I mentioned before, keeping the pressure on is an important point. Just so that, again, you're not reaching any divots in the road and having to start the pull again. It's soul destroying when that happens. So, you know, don't hold back at all. Don't make assumptions that it's going to be smooth sailing once you've actually got the thing moving. Make up for the slower start by accelerating the whole way, and especially through the finish line. You're not done until it's done. So don't turn anything down. Keep the aggression up. Keep the intent as high as possible, and you should do well with that. Well, now, that's finished. Oh no, it hasn't. Well, now we come on to a video I found by World's Strongest Man, and it is a collection of their favourite truck pulls. So let's have a little look, a little dig in, and I'm just going to point out some great pointers from these dudes. We'll get through the intro. So, first up, fierce competitor, a lighter body weight than a lot of the other athletes, which usually means that he's in great condition for these kind of things. Good start position. You see the toe line is really close to the floor. Now, he has to have an upward angle on that toe line. Otherwise, he'll just be crawling on the floor, and nobody's going to win a truck pull doing a commando crawl truck pull. Watch the rhythm of his hands and his feet. He's keeping constant tension on that rope. That's really important. You know, when you slip in, he slipped a few steps ago. He didn't lose his balance because he had good tension on that rope in the hands. He's staying on the balls of the feet. This is going to be a trend throughout the rest of these videos. Let's see if we can move that along a little bit. This one's a good one. Okay. So the multiple start options, I want you to keep that in mind when watching Thor. Again, the towing eye is quite close to the ground. He's got a good start position. That's a really sexually frustrated T-Rex. Baby steps. Yeah? He slipped a little bit initially, but then he realised that was too big a step, and now he's baby stepping. Watch these. He's doing multiple starting pulls, even as the thing's going, because he knows he needs to beat that time of 41.23, and the only way he's going to do that is by putting extra pressure on and putting in extra aggression, extra effort to beat that time, and he certainly does it. Staying on the balls of the feet, good hands and foot rhythm, nice. He beat the time, so it worked out well for him. I really loved that. Let's watch those again. It's these. Yeah, there you go, lads. Go on. So you can do that as many times through the truck pull as you like, as long as you keep in the rhythm of the feet and you're quite observant with what you do in the line that you're following and stuff. It'll work in your favour, so it's always a good option to go with. Well done, Thor. This one's just great to watch. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his surname. Let's see it. This is just absolute conviction throughout. Look at that fierce fucking pull. What an athlete. Not much to say about that. It's absolutely ace. Probably too light for him, to be fair. Lol. She liked it. Ah, we're Terry. Come on, big lad. Great start position. Towing eyes aren't too close to the floor, so you should be able to see a nice horizontal line on that tow rope. It's pointing up ever so slightly, but it's clearly not a problem. He's fucking massive, so the taller the athlete, the harder it's going to be for you to be able to adopt that horizontal line on the tow rope. But look at that intent. That hand and foot speed, the hand-eye coordination is epic. He's a rugby player, you know, an ex-rugby player, so he is going to be good at this. If you're shit at hand-eye coordination, I would really emphasise the importance of you practising the standing rope arm over arm pulls, just as your assistants work, and try and get it as fast as Terry's hands. Like, that is amazing. Once he gets going, Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's why he's one of the best truck pullers in the world. Alright, come on, Magnus. Let's get on with it. Nice start position. He didn't do the T-Rex drive. He doesn't need to. He's a heavy boy, and the truck is clearly not that heavy to break inertia. There's almost a horizontal line on the tow rope. Hand-eye coordination's pretty good. Foot and hand rhythm is matched. And I'm pretty sure he discards the rope because it becomes a bit too fumbly. Does he? He's not going to. I lied. But he's just keeping that pressure on. It's a really good pull. Nice consistent effort throughout, and see he's still trying to sprint through that finish line. Oh, he likes it. This one's cracking. Okay, so they've got some fucking mechanic or engineer or something from the crowd against Pall Sigmarsson, and I just, oh, bless him. Like, he's on snow, wearing Adidas little shoes, little pumps, and look at him go. This is amazing, but it's a really good example of how the optimal position in certain conditions is going to be absolutely suboptimal. So this engineer guy, poor bloke, he's nice and upright, and he's finally got the thing going. Pall Sigmarsson is also pretty upright on that as well, because you just can't get enough traction on snow wearing trainers as you can with a flatter foot. So there, his body weight's kind of pressing down into the ground before pushing back. In an ideal setup, in ideal conditions, you want to be, toe line horizontal, you want to be driving the floor down and back. But in suboptimal conditions, you want to be pressing down a lot more than you are pressing back, and that'll just save you from going arse over tit. Breaking your nose on a truck pull. That wouldn't be good. Beautiful start position, beautiful intent. Fumbly, maybe the rope is a little bit mashed between his feet, maybe he was tripping over that, I don't know. But once he got into the rhythm, this is an epic pull, because there's just consistent effort. He's not just relying on his leg strength and his body weight, he's putting in effort with his upper body as well. And actually you can see the truck starting to slow down as he gets closer to the finish line, not because he's not trying, but because the surface is changing. It's probably this carpet is starting to get a little bit gathered, or maybe there's a little upward slope. You just don't know, but maximal intent is going to take you soaring through that finish line, even if the road starts to slope upwards, like you just saw on that pull. Another great truck puller. They all are. That's why they're in this particular compilation. So, great start position. Relatively horizontal line. Building momentum. He's taking those baby steps. He's rhythmic with the hands and feet. And he's just keeping both lines nice and tight. Following a straight line. Building more speed. He's got the gloves on, the special Josh Lancaster gloves. They're not the same. I think they're from like a Builder's Merchants. And he's accelerating through the line as much as he can. It's starting to slow down. It's getting difficult, but he's not letting up. He's still following those same principles. I think that concludes learning from the best. Now, little sad Jenny sat there, questioning her life choices. Key points to take home. Dominate your start position, yeah. I can't reiterate that enough. You fail that start position, you've pretty much given away a good position on the rest of the pull, so nail that start position. Be aggressive. Keep the pressure on. Keep both ropes under tension. Climb the ladder. Happy fucking truck pulling.